We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots of trade talk around a variety of teams, including the Maple Leafs, the Calgary Flames, as well as the New York Rangers and New York Islanders. We get some pretty significant updates on where things stand with RFA Luke Hughes of the New Jersey Devils. A couple of big signings today as well, including Cam Fowler with St. Louis, as well as Anthony Stolarz with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And again, another very busy day with the NHL waiver wire with over 20 players available again. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video and lots of waiver activity, of course. Very common this time of year in training camp as teams cut down their rosters. A lot of players need waivers to go to the minor leagues. So we have over 20 players again with that. Plus we got some signings, potential RFA signings that's getting closer, and a bunch of rumors around a variety of teams, including potential extension talks with the Devils with their starting goaltender. First news of the waiver wire, though. Like I said, we have over 20 players again on the waivers here today. Lots of activity. We haven't had any claims yet. Everybody that was on waivers yesterday did clear. We'll see if we have any claims as early as tomorrow. Very quite possible that we may not, and things may continue here. But we have Anaheim Ducks have Jan Mysak on waivers. The Blackhawks have Dominic Toninato on waivers. The Buffalo Sabres have Jake Leschyshyn and Zach Jones. The Columbus Blue Jackets have a few players here, including Hudson Fasching, Brendan Gaunce, and Mikhail Pythia. The Colorado Avalanche have defenseman Ronnie Attard. The Dallas Stars have Kyle Capobianco, Cole Lynn, and Antonio Stranges. We also have a bunch of Montreal Canadian players, including Alex Belzil, Nathan Clerman, Lucas Condotta, Mark Delgaizo, and Sean Farrell. The Devils have Ryan Schmelzer. The St. Louis Blues have Matt Luff and defenseman Corey Schooneman. The Lightning have a few players here as well, including Ryan Fanti, Simon Lundmark, Scott Sabourin, and defenseman Steven Santini. So that's a mouthful right there, but we got a lot of players on facing waivers to be demoted to their AHL clubs, like I said, as teams continue to make cuts here and trim down their rosters to get closer and closer to their opening night cap compliant NHL rosters for the beginning of the season here. Coming soon in early October. A couple of big signings here as well. One that went down actually late last night, but I'd already produced last night's video, so I figured we would just include it here today. And I did do a video earlier in case you missed it with the waivers news and the signings, but we'll just quickly touch on them here. Cam Fowler extends with St. Louis. 3-year deal at $6.1 million. He was like a revelation almost in a sense. Like after coming over from the Anaheim Ducks to St. Louis last year, he really was rejuvenated, found his game, and played some of the best hockey we've seen out of Cam Fowler in a long time. Clearly, he was a player that I think they were very, very pleased with, and obviously looking to extend and keep him around. We've seen the Blues kind of slowly tinker and kind of rejig their blue line over the past couple of years. They've got some guys there that have had a lot of trade protection, and I think they were kind of, I don't know, in my opinion, were a little too aggressive with those no move clauses when they were signing a lot of these guys back a number of years ago, but they're slowly turning things over there, and Fowler's been a real nice find for them. So big extension there. And then today we get the announcement, which we knew they were working on it, and it's done now. Goaltender Anthony Stolarz has extended with the Toronto Maple Leafs, gets a 4-year contract at $3.75 million. There was a lot of talk that the Leafs were preferring 3 years for term, not 4, and it was going to probably be somewhere between $4 and $4.5 million. So my best guess here is that there was a little bit of a concession on both sides. I think the Leafs said, okay, we'll go to 4 years if we come down a little bit on AAV. So I think he get the extra year, comes down probably from 4 to 3.75, and we get ourselves a deal. So Stolarz, like I said, was really good last year for the Leafs. Obviously, always been a good goalie for a long time, but somebody who's kind of looked upon as being a little bit of a late bloomer because he missed so much time early in his career with a lot of injuries. Was more of a backup role, if you will, the last few years. I obviously get to go with the Panthers and back up Bobrovsky during their first Stanley Cup. So that was a big year for him to be not only have a good season with the Panthers, but get a Stanley Cup ring. Just even though he wasn't the starting goaltender that played a ton, like he was still gathering in all that experience, and this being around now, I'm sure was huge for him and his development in his career. And now he gets, like I said, the biggest contract of his life. Like, he's only had 1 or 2 year deals since his rookie contract. So ultimately, between him and Wall, I mean, we don't know what's going on with Wall, but I don't think we have any reason to think he won't be back at some point. Obviously, whatever he's dealing with is personal, and obviously, teams respecting his privacy and keeping everything quiet. So, but still, they got James Reimer in camp as a reinforcement insurance policy, if you will. Stolarz and Wall, though, if they're going to be the tandem for this team, between what's it going to be, a little over $7 million, between $7 and $8 million bucks. Like, a lot of top goalies are making 7 or 8 on their own. To have a tandem in that price range should be really good for them. With a rising cap, finally, they should be able to be putting some really good teams together and kind of extend their window with still many good productive years out of their top guys like Matthews and Nylander, etc. We'll see how this team kind of responds here, but certainly a good signing for Stolarz. Now, speaking of goaltenders and contracts, we'll talk about the Devils next. We know that they obviously traded for Jacob Markstrom last year, and then they brought in Jake Allen, of course, later in the season as well. The year before, so we had, in the last year, they've brought in 2 veteran guys. The year before that, of course, a couple of years back, the Devils were looked upon as being, unfortunately led by a lot of youth between the pipes, and they didn't think that any of those guys were really ready for the full-time, prime-time deal here. But Markstrom and Allen both been good for them. Of course, Jake signed an unexpectedly long-term. I think he was 5 years this offseason, so. For a goalie in his mid-30s, that was a little surprising, but we've seen some creativity on term with some teams on these guys, like what Marchand did in Florida. And now we get Jacob Markstrom, of course, in the final year of his deal, looking at an extension with the Devils as well. According to Devils reporters, that there's talks ongoing, and it's believed that the initial offer from the Devils would be around $5 million per season. He's making $6 now, so it's a small bit of a discount. Obviously, he's getting a little bit older. They're hoping that he might be willing to extend a few years at a discounted rate, and they can have a pretty good tandem with Markstrom and Allen at a good cap hit. So we'll see how negotiations go. Have no reason to think Markstrom would be anxious to leave or anything. I think he's enjoying his time there so far. They had a pretty good season last year, so we will see where negotiations go. But the Devils certainly interested in keeping their veteran tandem together for the foreseeable future. Now, a bunch of other rumors. We'll stick with New Jersey here as well. This one regarding Luke Hughes, the top RFA name on the market that's unsigned right now, especially with Mason McTavish and the Ducks ending their stalemate and getting a deal done here yesterday. But Luke Hughes is still, of course, missed a good amount of time in camp. The season's not far away. I think it's definitely reaching the point here. It's a little bit of a pressure point that I'm sure he doesn't want to miss. Opening night, doesn't want to miss paychecks. That's always, a big deal for players, of course. And a lot of speculation now. We know that they've been talking long term. I know there's all the rumors about Luke wanting a 5-year deal to match his brother Jack and all that. I don't know if that's really true, but we've heard it enough for sure. We'll see what happens. But there is speculation that when this is all said and done, the belief is he may end up signing a contract worth more than both of his brothers at 8 years, $9 million a season. So if you look at the Devils' decor and their cap situation, that is going to likely, as much as you could probably project things out and kind of look at Luke Hughes and what he's going to become and all that, and with the cap rising, it may not be a bad deal for the player or the team, but it's going to be a little bit challenging from a cap perspective. They definitely have their challenges. Like I said, there was lots of speculation and talk around the future of Dougie Hamilton. Right now, they've got some injuries. Obviously, Kovacevic is going to be out for a while as well right now to start the year. So, they're a little bit of a thinner blue line, especially with Luke not being signed right now. So, I don't think the Devils would prefer to really make a move out of that decor in the short term. And long term, though, whether it be this year or even next offseason, they're going to have some tough questions to face if they do sign Luke to this kind of a lucrative deal. And to be honest, it wouldn't be shocking if they do. If he does sign this kind of contract, with Jack signed for a long time, I would suspect if there is anything to the Quinn Hughes rumors and the three brothers wanting to play together, it likely would have to be in New Jersey. You would think, and especially if they're going to set themselves up here to have a shot at bringing Quinn in on he's going to be looking for a lucrative contract as well, right? I mean, if you look at the kind of seasons that Hughes has had, Quinn's definitely outplayed his contract. He's going to be in for a significant raise on his next deal, and if they got Luke locked up long term at 9, if that's what it ends up being, and then Jack signed long term, at a big number, guys like Hamilton might not really have a choice but to go. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out. Obviously, first and foremost, they want to get Luke signed to get him into camp so he doesn't miss the beginning of the season. But obviously, like I said, we're going to have to monitor with that news what comes next, what's the future hold for Dougie Hamilton, and of course, we'll be monitoring the situation with Quinn in Vancouver. A lot of the Quinn answers are going to be done by how that Canuck team does this year. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think Quinn's going to leave the Canucks if they're trending in the right direction and he thinks he has a chance to win there. But, if things aren't going well and they miss the playoffs again and he's got a chance to be a free agent in a year and play with his brothers, that's going to sound pretty enticing to him. So it's going to really boil down to where things are at. Maybe he signs short term, we're looking at Connor McDavid. There hasn't been any updates on McDavid here in the last few days, really. But same scenario, right? A lot of people think McDavid's going to sign short term and keeps the pressure on the team to keep a real competitive roster to make him intrigued to stay. It allows him to re-sign more frequently, which allows him to get more money longer term, even though it's not really about that for McDavid. He's already made, not that Quinn hasn't made good money, but McDavid's made even more, right? But it does allow players to take advantage of a rising cap to sign shorter deals. It just doesn't give them the security in case they get hurt or something, right? So we'll see. Obviously, there's lots of things there to monitor. And with Luke Hughes potentially signing this massive deal, it's just going to have a spin-off effect of a few other things that we'll have to be monitoring, which makes things interesting for sure. In Toronto, a new article from Jonas Seigel in The Athletic talking about some of the forward spots. Of course, we know that they've got an excess of forwards. And he did talk and get some quotes from David Kampf, who's expecting to be moved. I think at this point, listening to the quotes from the player, he even said, it feels like he's lost a spot. He didn't play a lot, in the most important games last year in the playoffs, end of the year. So, he knows that he's going to work that much harder and be that much more impressive to get back in. And, as Seigel writes here, that he's kind of on the outside of Berube's lineup looking at opening night. And, obviously he's lost his 4C spot, which is likely, they have a deep lineup at that position. It's probably going to be Scott Lawton, who you wouldn't think would be a 4C, but that's where likely he's going to slot. So that, takes him out of there. You get other guys that they're starting to bring in to learn to kind of, obviously, especially with Marner's departure, where he was a big part of their penalty kill. They've got other guys, joining that special team and learning to kill penalties and whatnot. He just kind of lost a spot. There's really no spot for him. I mean, same goes for Yarncroke and to some degree Robertson. It's going to be tough for any and all of these guys. I think over the short term, I wouldn't be shocked if they're all moved at some point between the start of the season, the early part of the season, what have you. But Kampf is a player that, according to this latest report here, that if they can't find a trade for him before opening night, that he could be a player that ends up on waivers. At least they can get some cap relief by putting him in the Marlies system if he clears. If he gets picked up, great. But where he's got multiple years on his deal, he's probably not likely to get picked up on waivers, but at least they can get some cap relief in the interim. And if they can find a trade, great. And you know what? If they put him through waivers and he clears, that might even make his contract a little bit more desirable for a trade. So if a team brings him in and they do want to put him in the minors, they have that option without, putting them through it again. So we'll see what happens on the Leafs front, but Kampf has definitely kind of seen the light here, if you will. Writing's on the wall. Time's running out. Just a matter of how he departs, whether it's waivers or trade. Dave Pagnotta reporting on the Flames and defenseman Rasmus Andersson. According to Dave Pagnotta, the top two choices for Andersson continue to be Dallas and Vegas. There was a trade lined up with LA before, and he declined to sign an extension. So things did not move forward. So obviously LA was a team that had interest and wasn't going to do it if he wasn't going to extend, and I don't blame them. So we will see what happens. We've heard the team being comfortable going into the beginning of the year with Andersson on the roster. We heard a few days ago that they were both Craig Conroy, the GM, and Anderson's camp were willing to talk maybe one more time just to see if there's any saving grace here, to see if they can find a way. But I'm not sure it really makes the most sense. It would take an 8-year deal with lucrative money to convince Anderson to stay. And is that really what's best for the Flames right now? I'm not really sure that it is. So we'll see what happens, and if he eventually does land in Vegas or in Dallas. With the New York Rangers, we've seen reports back last week talking about how Chris Drury, the general manager of the Rangers, reportedly had conversations with Artemi Panarin in the offseason, he and his representation, to talk about an extension. But of course, he's making big money now. It was a big free agent signing. It's worked out pretty well. They would like to keep Panarin. There is some interest there. It's not like it's a case of them not wanting to, but thinking after he got paid such big money, and of course, getting a little bit older, still productive, but towards the latter part of his career, if you will, that they went to him and said, listen, we would like to talk to you about an extension, but we're kind of hoping after paying you such big bucks over the last 7 years that maybe you'll take a team-friendly discount and kind of lower your AAV, maybe extend for a few years. And apparently he rejected that and wasn't too fond of the idea. So, again, that doesn't tell us for sure that he's not staying or anything like that, but it does put his future in somewhat of a question mark or in doubt when, conversations happen like that around extensions and they don't go well. Then it does kind of, make you wonder what could happen. But obviously, if he's going to stay, by the sounds of things, he's not willing to do a team friendly. So he's going to have to be paid what he feels is appropriate and what his current value is. And that might be challenging for them if they want to continue improving the team. Of course, we know that the Rangers are probably a little bit reluctant to extend anybody at big money right now without knowing the future of some players who could be pretty prominent UFAs next year. Until guys like Kaprizov and McDavid have contracts signed, and until we know for sure that they're staying with their teams, if they become free agents next year, New York being one of the top markets, I'm sure would be all over that and want to have every opportunity to bring one of those guys in. So they're probably not going to want to tie up too much of their cap. They're going to want to leave some money open here. So we will see what happens. But obviously, I think it's fair to say with the rejection of that idea from Panarin, at the very least, it just kind of puts his future a little bit in question. But again, it's early. We'll see what happens. In Long Island, with Pierre LeBrun reporting, New York Islanders could look at trading the captain Anders Lee this year. Basically says that if they're not in a playoff spot, once we kind of reach that halfway point of the season, if the Islanders, because some people think the Islanders are going to be, probably a bottom 10 team. Some people think they might be more like, a team that maybe doesn't make the playoffs, but maybe a little closer to the middle of the league. It's hard to say. I'm not sure exactly where I see them. I know based on the season preview I put up the other day, I kind of see them kind of being better than I think a lot of people expect. I'm not sure they're a playoff team, but I do think that they're going to be probably in the middle of the pack in the Metro Division, and they could end up in that mushy middle again where they don't really get a high pick, but they don't get in the playoffs either. And that's my concern for that team because they got really fortunate last year, got the first overall pick, but they could use a few more high picks to really turn that program around. But Lee, of course, has been a good soldier for them, became captain after Tavares departed, signed a long-term extension. We're now nearing the end of that. But as LeBrun reports, which we've, this is not the first time I've heard this report, so obviously makes sense, and I believe it to be true, that Lee and GM Matthew Darche have developed a good relationship. They've had a good conversation about his future, and neither side is stressed about it. They've begun taking the approach of let's just kind of see what happens with the season. All options are on the table. Nobody is stressed about it. And if they're looking like they're going to be out of it at the halfway point of the year, they'll start having some conversations about would you like to be able to go somewhere else, see how he's playing, is he healthy, what teams might be interested, and kind of weigh out the options and figure out what makes sense best for the team and for the captain. So we'll see what happens with Lee in the Islanders, but definitely a player with a lot of experience who could be a good addition for teams going to the playoffs if he indeed does move along. So we'll see. As I mentioned as well, you could throw in a guy like Pajot in that conversation for the Islanders as well. I'd be quite surprised if he's not moved. Like I said, a guy like Cal Ritchie, I think he might not start the season with the Islanders, but he's right there, and I think he's ready for the opportunity and could easily slide into the middle six center spot for them. So we'll see what they do. I do expect a few deals to come out of that team with a couple of more veterans moving along. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.